Let me start by welcoming you in Djibouti and tell you how much we are delighted to have you all as regional directors. And this retreat shows us how much Djibouti's importance is growing in terms of multilateral venue in this region. I really would like to pinpoint or flag a few items during this meeting. The number one issue that is somehow a source of concern for all of us is that multilateralism is under attack. I am not exaggerating my words when I'm saying that we are living in a world that is becoming more and more protectionist, more and believing more and more in populism, and also going away from the principles and the values that have created this great organization, the UN organization, some 60 years ago and beyond. Those values and principles are still valid, but because of some challenges and crises and wind of violence blowing through the world, major countries feel that protectionism is the best way to protect their interest and the interest of their people, while the very essence of the UN system is indeed protecting the whole citizens in the world, protecting peace, promoting security, providing access to education, to health, alleviating poverty, and trying to provide the best chances to our boys and girls, regardless to any other consideration. So it is high time that the thinking we have, the way we put our approach and ideas together to deal with those challenges, that way needs such kind of meetings. We also know that there are whole series of sets of reforms going on through the UN system. Because of, we have to be also outspoken in that, because of that kind of populism or protectionism that doesn't see the role of the UN system as very, very, very important for the world. We can see that budgets are cut from here and there. We can see that programs are no longer funded by countries that can do so. But we believe, at least in Djibouti, that this system should continue to deliver. It should continue to work on how to develop those values and principles so that we can improve the livelihood of our kids today and also in the future. We also need to focus, as I can come back to the region, a little bit about the dynamics going on in this region. We are experiencing a new era, unprecedented era of stability. There is this new dynamics of reconciliation processes, normalization processes going on between countries in the region. And this opens also opportunities for countries in the region to start really thinking of integration in terms of paving the way to real, consultation and becoming closer to countries, people in the region, trying to get the best out of what our peoples in the region can do. That dynamics cannot be eluded, at least in the thinking of the UN system. You cannot just look at it as national processes where leadership in the region are left with it and saying that, okay, let's wait and see what can come out of that process. I know you don't think like that. You're always you have always in your pockets contingency plans. This is the words of the UN system. But it takes more. It takes more to prepare a contingency plan to what's coming. I think it's the whole thinking that has to change. Because in this region now we have very visionary leadership that are taking the stage now, saying, okay, things has to change, ups and downs. We are not dealing with challenges the same way we had to deal with those challenges. So things are changing. There is a kind of paradigm shift. You have to keep pace with that. You should keep pace with that. And I know it's not an easy business, job. You have less and less resources, and you are also asked to deliver more and to deliver in the best way you can. So it's always difficult to do something when you know that you don't have the necessary resources for that. But as the saying goes, where there is a will, there is a way. The other issue I would like to pinpoint here is that there are a series of agendas, sometimes running side by side, not to say that they are sometimes antagonistic. But you have the UN 2030 agenda. In Djibouti, we have our own Djibouti 2035 vision and agenda, and Minister Ilyas, my colleague, will certainly elaborate more. We have a program called SCAP, stemming out from this agenda 2035. You also have, alongside these two agendas, you have the African Union Agenda 2063, and also at the end of the day, you wonder if those various agendas are heading to the same goal, same end. But this is not an option. Even if we wonder that there might be some divergences, but there is no other alternative than trying to align those agendas together so that we can reach those common goals we are trying to reach, which are, of course, alleviating poverty, providing access to education, health, and giving the same chance for boys and girls when it comes to the livelihood or to any other social issues. I just would like to say a last word on the way we can protect together multilateralism. It's not an easy job. I reckon that, I recognize it, but I think that it starts with believing. We should believe that multilateralism is the best framework that can bring nations together, people together, countries together. This is, one of the most stable foundation of multilateralism. Once we believe in it, we develop our own policies around this belief and this consideration. The other issue is that the wind of populism blowing now over the world, and the protectionism we also notice in some countries, I think is a passing cloud. We have to look at it as a passing cloud. We cannot just build our future multilateral cooperation on those very limited in time situations that I'm sure we will overcome in the near future. The last word is to tell you that in Djibouti, if I can come back to our own experience in the relationship we have with the multilateral system, we have a lot of, let's say, shortages in terms of coordination at national level. We need to improve the mechanism of coordination we do have at national level, and we recognize that there is a default and many shortages on that. If there is no strong and performant coordination system, the whole process of having good results at the end of the day, strong outcome of what we are doing together, those results can be jeopardized or even put at stake. So believing in multilateralism, getting the best out of it through the best coordination mechanism, and also trying to do the best we can with the limited resources we have. These are, I think, three pillars of how we can protect and defend multilateralism. And in Djibouti, we believe in that, and I thank you for your attention.
Multilateralism, working together, coordination, that's music to my ears. Thank you very, very much. Excellency, so what shall we do?
Thank you, Barbara. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Djibouti. It's always difficult to come after Mohammed. But actually, he stayed at international cooperation and multilateralism. He left the regional part, which is much more specialist than me. I will try to combine and to complement, actually. My English is not as good as his English.
We have translation.
Whenever I have difficulties, I will shift in French. So keep your headphone ready. It's an honor to exchange here and to have you first in Djibouti. And it's a good opportunity, maybe the first of its kind in Djibouti. We used to...
Actually in the world.
Yeah, international laws. We used to have a way to communicate with the UN system in Djibouti, but at regional level, it's even much greater. And I will emphasize where Djibouti is standing in the region and what are we doing in order to create a synergy or bring our national plan applicable and through the global the goals, ODD in French we call it. From Djibouti perspective, you know about Djibouti and its role in the region. And maybe I will try to quickly emphasize about the paradox we are living in dealing with our own opportunities as well as in our challenges. Djibouti is 23,000 square kilometers. It's 1 million population, an average of 1 million population, with almost zero resources, natural resources at this point of time to be considered as a asset for Djibouti development. And in a volatile region, very unstable region, and the day one of our independence. Since we took it over, the independence of Djibouti, 77, so 42 years back, there was only one high school in Djibouti, only one high school, the whole territory. And we had, as far as I remember, 2 medical doctors with less than 100 locals, Djiboutians,
teachers or professors in the schools. From infrastructure perspective, except one port without any sophisticated equipment, that was the only asset we started from to try to develop and to make sure that we are still remaining and standing strong. At the same time, with that very poor, what we took it from that time from the French, during that same 1977, a war was started between Ethiopia and Somalia, the two largest neighboring countries. So you can imagine how our elders, our leaders at that time had tough time to remain balanced and to remain independent from all these threats, regional threats mainly. Thanks God, we are still here, better than ever, but still with greater challenges, including the very last actuality on actualities or event happening in the region positively. So we know all of us that we are also having a very serious shortage of fiscal and budget space. But at the same time, we tried to build over all these challenges and to transform it into opportunities. Number one, we very quickly started to understand that our location is much more important than the natural resources which we were not having. And the number one decision was, let us make use of the location. So Djibouti is, at this point of time, location, location, and location. We built what we had as a comparative advantage. Number one, port infrastructures. I myself used to be for about 13 years, very long time back, the CEO of the port. And I remember the day when the crisis happened between Ethiopia and Eritrea, the traffic volume was about 2 million tons. We were ourselves, for local businesses and transshipment, not more than 1.7 million tons. And all of a sudden, 2.7 million tons. That was the traffic at 1998 for Ethiopia, including 1 million tons of aid cargo. So all in all, 3 million tons for Ethiopia to be in one day to another to be accommodated and to be serviced for Ethiopia. When you compare to the 14 million tons of today for Ethiopia only, it seems a little bit small. But comparing to that time with our own 1.7 million tons local and international transshipment, almost the double of that volume was all of a sudden reached to Djibouti, and we were about 200. To say that we invested ahead of that traffic shifted to Djibouti, not for Ethiopia, but to make Djibouti as a regional hub And Djibouti was the first ever container terminal in the region and almost in Africa, except Durban in South Africa. We were one of the few container terminal at that time. And the container terminal was invested, in fact, executed about 80s, 1980, 84 actually. Over the port facilities, we developed the telecommunication. Again, we developed the telecommunication because that was another not comparative advantage of Djibouti, but absolute advantage of Djibouti. It still remains by far the most largest telecommunication infrastructure in Africa, with the largest capacity in terms of bandwidth. So we can talk about what are we doing with it. That is another question we might raise another time. But in terms of capacity, this is what we have. No one in Africa at this point of time can match the capacity in terms of telecommunications. So that is the number two, we build it. We also remained very much regional trade oriented. Again, because of the great decision taken by our elders in 1949, if I'm correct, our Djibouti franc were connected to the dollar. And since 1949, Djibouti currency have never changed. It remained the same, 177.5. Meaning very strong and stable currency, which is not the case generally in Africa. But because we had also some other urgency in developing human capital, I told you about having only 2 medical doctors with only one high school. Health were also another area of priority, still remain a priority. We were looking more and more capital in order to really offer better service to our populations. So we believe we are still very far from our goals, but we came from very far. And still we are working to make it much more aggressively in Djibouti on the map in order to really take advantage of our location as well as numbers of opportunity. But at the same time, we have to deal with insecurity, terrorism, piracy, and dealing with migration. And overall, dealing with climate change, because it's one of the region where climate change effect is really very, 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 comment on dit, criant.
Shouting. Very impactful.
Very impactful, yes. So, where we are at this point of time re-engineering our GDP. And we found that our GDP was estimated about 25% less than what it is. We were arguing these last weeks with the IMF, which we now agreed, because the capacity were missing also from some areas which are fundamental for state building and institutions building, such as database, statistics, and planning capacity. Once you have a capacity to plan, then you need to execute. So, after all, there are numbers of lessons we are really happy to share with. But I will concentrate here this afternoon in my thought at regional perspective. What are we doing together, and how are we working with our neighbors, and how can we work with our neighbors while also having more interaction with UN system as a whole, because it's a must, as Minister Mahmoud was explaining. We are at the challenging time of multilateralism is threatened. And this is the time we need more multilateralism. Number one, from security dimension. Look at Djibouti playing its own role and taking very seriously about its responsibility in order to